FM 94 The Dark. It is that time again. It's time to get to know a band we play here on The Dark. And today on the phone, I'm talking with Charlie Calv with the band Radio Exile. Of course, we've been spinning their song No Pity on the Highway. And coming up after the interview tonight, we're going to debut their latest track called Soulfire. We'll get to that in just a moment. But first of all, thanks for joining me very much, Charlie, here on The Dark. And how are things going for you today?
Good, man. Thanks for having me, Jay-Z. Doing fantastic.
Awesome. Now, you're calling from New Jersey, so that's kind of where the band is based out of. Let's talk about the history of the band, Radio Exile, and how did this band all come about?
It actually started about 2 years ago. I had actually run into an old friend of mine, Dave Anthony. He was actually the drummer in Radio Exile. And I had known Dave for a long time. We actually went to high school together, had our first high school band together. And, one of these things, you run into each other every couple of years. You always talk about doing something. It just never happens. So kind of the last time we got together, I was like, hey, man, if we don't do something soon, I don't think we're ever going to do it. So that was kind of the catalyst. I sent him some material I was working on, and, he kind of liked what I was doing. And, I asked him, I said, hey, man, I need a good singer or, a good writing partner. Do you know anybody? And he recommended Chandler Mogul, who's the singer in Radio Exile. And Chandler just fit the material that I was working on perfect, and he's a fantastic vocalist, and me and him hit it off really well, and when we just started working together and started writing this record, and kind of started from there, and then we kind of had a short list of people we wanted to work with, and Jimmy Leahy, the guitar player, was on our short list of guitar players, and luckily he was available, and he was able to come on board and help us out, and then we're kind of looking around for bass players, and, funny enough, Chandler just kind of ran into Kenny Aronson at a gig that he was doing and kind of asked him what he was up to and told him what we were doing, and Kenny seemed interested, and so Chandler reached out to me and said, how about Kenny? And I was like, Kenny Aronson? Of course, man, the guy's legendary. I'd love to play with Kenny. Mm-hmm. So we sent Kenny some material, and he got on board as well, and that's kind of how it all got started.
Very cool, very cool. And I've had a chance to listen to your CD, and I tell you what, it's unique in the way that it's almost bringing back kind of the old school classic rock. Is that kind of something that you guys were really trying to drive on this CD?
Yeah, I think it kind of just happened. We all kind of grew up on that music from the late 70s, some early 80s stuff. Some of the guys, mid 70s, early 70s. So I think it's kind of ingrained in us. So, as we started writing, that's just kind of what came out. It's just, I guess, what we're about. And even if we try to move away from it, it kind of just winds up in that genre anyway. So, it wasn't a conscious effort, but it just kind of happened that way.
In today's rock right now, and I'm just calling it, I guess, active rock today, a lot of the stuff is once again starting to sound the same over and over. It's just different people doing it, where you kind of need to stand out, and in a way, bringing back, I guess, kind of the old classic rock feel again almost makes it new to these people that are, 20 and 30-year-olds rather than us 40 and 50-year-old guys, huh?
I think it does, and I think we kind of put our own little spin on that classic rock sound, and, obviously, it's got modern elements because, you're surrounded by it every day listening to radio and stuff like that. So, I think it's a good blend of both. Like you said, I think it's introducing a lot of the younger kids. They think it's new, but it's based in something that's old.
How has the feedback been so far across the country, and for that matter, with radio stations playing your music?
It's been great. It was released in Europe back in October, and it came out here recently, and actually just in Japan a couple of weeks ago. And the response has been great. We were really surprised. I don't want to say surprised, but kind of taken back because the reviews have just been phenomenal. And, when we put this together, we didn't know what to expect. We didn't know, number one, how it was going to sound when we got in a room together. We didn't know how well the record would be received, if anyone would be even interested in putting it out. So, each thing was a new step for us. And then, once it's out and people are really digging it, it's like, wow, this is pretty cool.
Very cool. We're talking with Charlie with the band Radio Exile. The name Radio Exile, what's the history, the story behind the name?
That's kind of funny. It actually started out as a different name, and Exile was actually in that. And, once we were kind of wrapping up the record, we were kind of having a conversation, and kind of our A&R guy on this, Steve Lunt, who actually co-produced a couple tracks with us, kind of threw out the name Radio Exile, like, wow, that sounds cool, and it kind of makes sense because, here we are, in 2015, 2016, releasing this record. It's kind of got a classic rock vibe. Classic rock radio only plays classic rock. Where are we going to wind up with this? And kind of tongue-in-cheek, kind of Radio Exile. It'll probably never get played anywhere.
Well, you're getting spun on airwaves, and I got to believe you're getting spun across the United States, too, and a lot of airwaves, too, and probably on the active rock side, too, because it's kind of where you've kind of put yourself into lately, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it's like I said, we didn't expect it, but we're not complaining at all.
As long as it's spinning, right? That's all that matters.
Absolutely.
Hey, let's get to know you a little bit more, Charlie, and obviously you kind of already alluded to it a little bit, and some of the band members kind of growing up with the music in the 70s and maybe the early 80s. What were some of the influences for you that got you into the music industry?
Me, I'm going back to, Led Zeppelin, all-time favorite band for me. Kind of got me into music and kind of got me into playing keyboards. And I heard In the Light off of Physical Graffiti for the first time, and I was like, that's what I want to do.
Right.
So that was kind of my catalyst. But, I like, Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Bad Company, Foreigner, a lot of that stuff. Yeah, I liked a lot of the progressive stuff, yes, Kansas. So, kind of grew up listening to that kind of music. And then, my kind of generation, kind of grew up through the 80s. So I had that whole influx and that influence. A lot of interesting bands, and like the Cars and stuff like that. Just great songs, and that's what I always liked, was bands that wrote great songs, not about an image or not about marketing or whatever, just great songs. And I think that's why the classic rock stuff still gets played, because they're just great tunes.
Yeah, very cool. And I'm reading some of your bio stuff here too, and some of the things I guess you've worked with on studio stage, some of the members of your bands. This list is crazy. Paul McCartney, Bob Dylan, Hall & Oates, Alison Krauss, Billy Idol, the list goes on and on. That's a pretty cool talent pool to be tapped into, isn't it?
It's amazing. These guys are just phenomenal players. Kenny, for example, Kenny had his first number one hit in, it was like 1972, 73. So, and he's played with everyone from, you mentioned Hall & Oates and...
Right.
And Billy Idol and Billy Squier and the New York Dolls and Joan Jett and et cetera, and Jimmy, fantastic guitar player. I was played with John Waite and Dennis DeYoung and Alison Krauss, and so it's just a great pool of musicians to work with. And they're fantastic players, and that was kind of the idea. We wanted to get guys that were diversified, not your typical maybe hard rock metal guys, just guys that could play any style of music. So once we got in the studio, we can kind of just play and be able to do anything that we wanted to do with really no limitations. Has
it helped you guys, I guess, get in a little bit because of the, like the Kennys and all those guys that have helped you out, and they've been back playing with guys and gals like we just mentioned? Is it easier for you at least to get yourself into the industry a little bit more?
It does help. Kenny's been a fantastic help because no matter who you talk to, everybody knows Kenny, or at least someone that Kenny's played with. So, yeah, I think it's opened some doors that we wouldn't have been able to open as quickly on our own. That's cool.
We're talking with Charlie, who's with the band Radio Exile. I want to get to the CD Soulfire, and I should say, the song Soulfire. That's a song we haven't played here on our airwaves yet. The song we've been playing is No Pity on the Highway. Let's talk about both of them, first of all. But let's go to Soulfire, your current single that's out right now. What's the story? What's the history behind this song?
That's kind of it's just a great kind of uplifting tune. No major meaning behind it, just some great lyrics and great melodies. And that one was actually sent to me by Chandler. I know we kind of wrote this record two ways. Some of it, I had the music first, and Chandler would kind of come on board and write some lyrics and melodies and work on the arrangement. And then on the flip side, an example being Soulfire, he pretty much sent me this entire song, lyrics and melodies all laid out. And I'm kind of sitting there as a musician saying, what the heck do I do with this? And kind of wrote the song around, and that's how we did a couple of songs. And it was interesting because I'd never written like that. But I think it kind of put a whole new spin what we were doing, and things sound a little bit different because it kind of pushed my boundaries and pushed me to do something a little bit different.
What I like hearing there is when you said there really is no meaning behind it. And I tell you what, I think back classic rock-wise, it was just go out, play something that's cool, something that's fun, something that's hip. Doesn't even have to have a meaning, just as long as it rocks, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Like when we came time to do the video, I mean, there's kind of a storyline behind it. I mean, obviously it's kind of like a boy meet girl sort of,
Right.
Soulfire kind of falling in love with that. But, a lot of the lyrics, Chandler's like, well, that just kind of sounded cool, so I used it. And I'm like, that's fine. I mean, I think, everyone can kind of interpret it, the way they want, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah, and I checked out the video too. You got some marinettes in there. You got looks like you had some strippers in there, which is good. Yeah, it's good for radio, right?
It's great. I mean, it definitely. I think it piques everyone's interest.
Absolutely, it's just kind of a hodgepodge of everything.
Yeah, we wanted to do something. We're actually going to do a different song as the second single, and then we were starting to talk about concepts of videos, and I just wanted to do something that was different, that kind of had a little bit of a vaudeville vibe, and Soulfire just kind of fit that. And we said, let's just go out, let's get the burlesque dancers, and we got the marionettes and the sword swallower and fire breather and all that kind of stuff, and just had a lot of fun with it.
Absolutely. Let's talk about No Pity on the Highway. Talk about that song just for a minute, and is there any history or story behind that song?
I mean, the meaning behind it, No Pity on the Highway, I mean, highway is really the reference of life. I mean, you're kind of going through life, and there's really no pity for the decisions that you make in life. I mean, you have to be accountable for them. And it kind of touches upon addiction, and you kind of see that in the video. And that song, believe it or not, was one of the last ones that we worked on. I kind of had the whole musical idea kind of sketched out, and wasn't really sure if it was going to, or at least I wasn't sure whether it was going to fit in or not. So I kind of held it back. It was probably one of the last 2 or 3 songs I sent Chandler. He immediately came up with the hook and just, it was pretty much done, like, on the spot. And so obviously I'm glad I sent it to him. And I just love it. I mean, it's got that kind of raw, kind of, I think, late 70s kind of, classic rock vibe to it. Some great guitar playing, and it's got that great groove. And it was just a lot of fun, and I'm really happy with the way that one came out.
Awesome. All right, talking with Charlie here from the band Radio Exile. Charlie, let's ask you some more questions here and get to know you a little bit more. What's in your music collection that might shock me?
Music collection that might shock you? I listen to all sorts of stuff. I've got Harry Chapin in my collection.
Yep.
Great songwriter, Neil Young.
Okay.
And I like soundtrack stuff. I got Jerry Goldsmith, Planet of the Apes soundtrack in my musical collection.
Nice.
And then and then the heavier stuff. I got Overkill records, and obviously Metallica records and Zeppelin records, and all sorts of different stuff, and pop stuff as well. I like all sorts of music. Once again, like I said earlier, just to me, if it's a great song, it's a great song, whether it's hard rock or metal or gospel or soul or whatever.
How about this? Let's talk about the current active rock scene. Do you follow much in the active rock scene much or not?
Not a lot. I mean, I do like new stuff. I mean, I love Rival Sons.
Okay, yeah.
I think it's just probably one of the greatest, newer bands to come out in a long time. Royal Bloods I like. Foo Fighters I love. I like a lot. Once again, I think because there's some great songs in there.
The question I was going to kind of lead into is if you had to put together a 3-band bill to go out and play with, and maybe some more so on the active rock side, or I guess we'll just use rock in general, what other bands would you like to play with, Radio Exile like to play out with?
I mean, newer stuff, I think Rival Sons would be awesome.
Yeah?
Something like that, or, I brought up Foo Fighters. I mean, it'd be awesome to go out with those guys and do some stuff. And if you want to talk on the classic rock side, I'd love to go out with Deep Purple or somebody like that.
That'd be awesome. That would be really cool, wouldn't it? Hey, what's some of the songs? You guys have played live, obviously. Have you done much touring as of late or not?
No, we're actually the biggest problem we have with this group. It's a blessing on the one side. You've got these great players, but
right.
They're so busy and they're constantly on the road. I mean, Kenny's currently with the Yardbirds, and they've got a pretty hefty touring schedule coming up in 2016. Dave and Jimmy are with Dennis DeYoung, and you'll see shortly they'll be announcing an opening slot on a pretty big tour this summer. So it kind of puts a hinder on what we can do, because all of a sudden you've got only select dates that you can do, so you really can't go out and properly tour. So I think what we're going to wind up doing is going in and start record number 2 instead, and then hopefully on the backside of that actually get into playing a little bit more live.
Hey, Charlie, have you had a chance to hear your songs played on the radio?
I have.
Okay.
It's cool.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
I was just going to ask you, what does it mean to hear your songs played on the radio?
it's great. I mean, it's interesting when you're driving down the road, especially in my home area here, and if something comes on the radio, it's pretty neat,
Hey, this is one question I love asking artists, bands, and that, and this might be a really easy question for you, but if there was an artist or artists out there that you would like to cover one of your songs, so what artist out there would you like to have cover a Radio Exile song?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I've never been asked that. Who would I like to cover my song? Wow. I'll tell you what, if David Bowie was still alive, that would be pretty awesome.
That would be cool. How about maybe somebody that is currently alive? Is there somebody that comes to mind, maybe?
I'm a huge Zeppelin fan, so if Robert Plant decided to put a new twist on one of my tunes, that'd be killer.
Okay. Maybe a different genre that could maybe do?
Well, I'd love to hear a pop artist do a nice twist on something we did. I mean, be interesting to see what a Justin Timberlake or something like that can do with one of our tunes.
That'd be really sweet, wouldn't it? Tell Kenny and the guys to get a hold of Justin and make this happen, right?
That'd be pretty cool, right? I mean, I think he can nail one of these tunes.
I bet you he could. Hey, how does more people in central Minnesota find out more about your band, Radio Exile? How can they get a hold of you and learn more about you?
Probably the best thing is to go to the website, www.radioexile.net, or you can find us on Facebook and Twitter and all the usual social media outlets. And they're they're kept up to date, so you'll get all up to date information and all things Radio Exile you can find there.
Awesome. And if you ever get a chance to go out and do some touring, make sure you make Minnesota a stop, because I think there's a lot of rockers here in Minnesota that love that kind of classic rock kind of feel, and I know that's for a fact here in central Minnesota, so definitely make sure you look us up.
Absolutely. Actually, a good friend of mine lives out there now, and he loves it.
Awesome. Well, we're going to debut for our Dark listeners your latest song, Soul Fire, right now, and once again, thanks so much for joining me, Charlie.
Hey, Jay-Z, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
That is Charlie's with the band Radio Exile, and as we said, we're debuting their latest song. It's called Soul Fire, hearing it right now on FM 94's The Dark.